Chris from Cosplay Alliance. As a seasoned cosplayer, you had hosted a panel earlier talking about old nerds, and how have you found that? Have you found it difficult as an older cosplayer, a seasoned cosplayer, to participate in these cons? And have you been able to get more people involved?
Hey, how you doing? Mark from Blurredography.
Mark, good morning. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Good afternoon to you. My first question for you, since this is the last day of con, what was your cosplay lineup for the weekend?
Actually, I had started off with an outline of what I thought it was going to be, and then I decided to become more ambitious than that, and ended actually adding 2 more costumes. So my lineup overall ended up being 3 on Friday, 3 yesterday, and today I decided, you know what, it's checkout day, and it's shopping day. But I had lined up this weekend Moon Knight, Batman, Nick Fury, Wolverine, Luke Cage mashup, and Thor.
Oh wow, that's a lot for 4 days.
Yeah, that's what I tell myself too. That's a lot for just any amount of days.
Right. Okay, I guess I'll keep asking questions until somebody come up. So what got you into cosplay? And I know that's kind of more of a generic question, but let's go ahead and just get it out of the way.
For me, I've always been a lifelong geek, and I've always loved comic books. I've always loved animation, and it's, for a while when I was younger, I wanted to actually be a comic book artist. I'm an artist already by nature. I'm a sketch artist, and cosplay. Attending Dragon Con, what seems like forever ago, I caught the bug. People just looked like they were having an amazing time embodying characters that they loved, and I got to see that, and I thought, that's something I'd like to do, or that's something I would really enjoy, and I did. And after that, it was just, I started off with one simple cosplay. I did Hancock from the Will Smith movie. Mm. And, once I did that first time around, it was, just from there, it was just trying to get to that next level, that next, thing. And, it just became more than just a hobby. It became a passion.
Hello, Robert from Blurredography. What's one of the most what's one cosplay that you finish and you felt like the most proud of for having finished it?
Well, I've always been a Batman fan. But there was a point in time I really didn't want to do Batman. I just felt like it was beyond me. It wasn't anything that I was just like, I love the character. I don't know that I want to necessarily be the character. Then there was a point where I was like, you know what, I'm going to try it out. I'm going to see actually if, and I'm going to start building, getting, sourcing different areas of from other artists as well, like, cowl makers and stuff. And started building this little by little, and then adding my own little flares and pieces to it. And then when it was completed, it was such a sense of accomplishment, because again, I love that character so much. It was great. And then it happened to correlate around the time that they introduced Tim Fox. So that was actually another big inspiration for me, was to go ahead and actually do a version of Batman, actually, and Batman that was a person of color as well, was a great segue to say, hey, this is actually one that I want to go ahead and do it, at the very least interpret in that same fashion. I still do it, and I still do it as if I'm Bruce Wayne, but having that character introduced was definitely part of where that inspiration came from.
Right, hey brother, I just wanted to ask, man. Hey, so when it comes to cosplay, for you personally, is there an end goal, or do you just do it out of passion and hey man, I'm just gonna do this to the day I die, or do you have goals set behind this cosplay?
I do it for fun, and so when I started out, I did it I did it mostly as a geek for fun. Over time, it's morphed into something that I've become very passionate about. But more than that, it's also become for me, a part of being part of the conversation and part of the, adding visibility and representation. That's always been like, for me, it's not about follow count. It's not. I mean, the moment it becomes a job, it automatically loses its luster. For me, if I can go ahead and actually dress as a character and have other people from a younger generation or any generation look at me and say, hey, you know what, he's doing it, I can go ahead and do it too. Or for kids, if they see it and they say, hey, I see that character, I'm finally seeing a physical version and in real life version of this character of color, that's actually something that has more gain for me and more weight than anything else. I mean, yes, you always want your artistry to be accepted and appreciated, and sometimes people equate that to follow count. I don't necessarily. For people that know me and know actually the person that I am, and when I attend cons, I refer to myself as the Ron Howard of cosplay. If you guys don't know who Ron Howard is, you probably know who. If you see his face, you know exactly who he is. He's the one guy that you're like, oh yeah, I remember him from that movie. You know who he is, but the name never gets you. That's what I am. I feel like a lot of people know who I am, and when you ask them about me, they have a very specific, hey, no, he's this person. He's always trying to be. He's always an advocate and a cheerleader, and always is encouraging. That's what I want. Anything else is secondary.
What's one of the most impactful memories that cosplaying has brought you?
Actually, I've had a lot of amazing memories. One of the things I segued into using cosplay was to volunteer. Here locally, here in Atlanta, actually, with a group called the Cosplay Volunteers of Atlanta. And so I was able to use this fandom to reach out to parts of the community that maybe actually don't have a chance or aren't able to visit, like, for example, Disney, or visit any of the parks and stuff like that, and get to experience seeing a superhero in front of them. And so we work with a lot of nonprofits, we work with a lot of charities, we work with a lot of festivals. And so I've had one particular experience with that organization where I worked with a hospice, and that was probably one of the most heartbreaking, traumatic experiences, but I would never change that for anything in the world. And it was a child that was being treated here, actually a child that came to the country to be treated here. He came from Africa, and he had asked actually for his favorite characters, Batman and Black Panther. And I was in Black Panther, and I went actually to go see this boy. And this is gonna stay with me for the rest of my life. One of the things he told me actually after he saw me, and he was excited, and he was just like, it's Black Panther, and I'm in my full everything, like helmet on and everything like that. Unfortunately, I couldn't interact because I didn't have my mic set up. He pulled me in, and actually he wanted me to come in close because I wanted to sort of at least try to interact with him as best I could. But one of his, let's say, dying wishes was, he was just like, can you take my family to Wakanda? Because his family, his mom and one of his siblings was here while he was getting treatment. The rest of his family was in Africa, and he just wanted to make sure that they were taken care of. And in his mind, he was talking to Black Panther, and that's one of the last interactions, that he had, because no more than I think a week later he passed. And that is, that's something that cosplay gave to me. That's something that volunteering gave to me. That will never ever leave my heart, and I am saddened and heartbroken for it, but I am grateful for that experience. A cosplayer, Bar Fox, years ago started a campaign. He still actually does, and he has if you get a chance to follow this particular Instagram and Facebook, Cosplay Your Way. meeting him and actually working with him was has been so far one of the best experiences when it comes to being a cosplayer, because I have learned a lot of things about, not only actually, acceptance to some degree. And when I say acceptance, I mean acceptance of myself, saying, hey, man, even if this character isn't necessarily actually of this specific race or is predominantly interpreted as a, as a white character, the version that you're doing is just as valid. And is just as and your artwork and your artistry is just as valid. Nothing can change that, because you cannot change. You can change fabric colors, you can change actual helmets, you can change props. You cannot change actually the color of your skin. And if you love that character and you are passionate about that fandom, then you should have every right, just like anyone else, to go ahead and cosplay that character and say, hey, you know what? As long as you're not being disrespectful of the character, if they are of another ethnicity, or if you're not, doing things actually that can be taken as off color, I think actually that shouldn't be a barrier. Not to mention the fact that I will give props, I feel, in this generation for what has been going on in the mainstream, specific with comic book movies. There's the multiverse. Any way you slice it, you're still valid, because there's a multiverse of characters that you can go ahead and say, I'm this variant. And it should no longer be relegated to, which it was at one point, people would walk up to somebody who's dressed up, say, for example, as Superman, and say, oh, you're the black Superman. No, I'm Superman. There is no caveat. Unless my name is specifically stating, and granted, understanding where these characters and the origin they came from, as my character's name starts with black, there shouldn't be any I'm the black this. If I'm Black Lightning, cool, that's part of his name. I'm not the Black Green Lantern, I'm Green Lantern.
Chris from Cosplay Alliance. As a seasoned cosplayer, you had hosted a panel earlier talking about old nerds, and how have you found that? Have you found it difficult as an older cosplayer or seasoned cosplayer to participate in these cons, and have you been able to get more people involved?
I feel like actually it is, I will say, I feel like I've been fortunate that so many people, I have, not had too many experiences, thank God, that have been negative within regards to my age or race. I've actually been extremely fortunate. I've seen colleagues and friends that have gone through it, and I can understand, I don't know if it's a case of, and I'm not trying to put this into the universe to try to, have people at me, but I have not had that experience, and maybe perhaps, I don't know if it's because I'm 6'4", and maybe people are like, hey, I don't want to go ahead and just start talking anything about this person. But thankfully, I will say I haven't had that, and so thankfully, when it comes to age, I have, recently, and when I say recently, I would say probably in the next 3 or 4 years, or last 3 or 4 years, been really embracing, being over 40 and being a cosplay, and being actually somebody who pushes for that to be part of the what the general consciousness, and normalizing that cosplay itself doesn't have to be relegated to you're 17 and you're into comic books or you're into anime. Cosplay is for any age. If you're passionate about it and you love it, no one should tell you how to be happy. That's not something anybody should have any say over for you. And if it makes you happy to cosplay, regardless of your age, I look at somebody like, for example, there's a cosplayer, Walt Oliver, and every time I see him do a cosplay, every single time, I'm just like, yeah, keep doing it. Keep doing exactly that. We need more of that in the space, so people can so it becomes normalized, and it doesn't become something of a, hey, you can't cosplay because you're this age, or you're this race, or you're this sex, or you identify this way. None of those things matter. Absolutely. Not to mention the fact, and I will say, for the majority of the the characters that are being cosplayed as, they're all fictional characters. So at the end of the day, they're all fictional characters. Do it the best way that you want, the best way you want to interpret it.
All right. So in the beginning, you mentioned that cosplaying is a hobby for you, and you also mentioned that you like to collab with other photographers and videographers. My question for you is, how do you manage the business of being a cosplayer? You are a more higher up cosplayer. You are being featured at a con, and you've been featured at other cons. You have to worry about branding and content, social media posts, and things like that. How do you manage the business of Dominycan Knyght cosplay?
That's a funny question because I don't consider it a business for me. It really is a fandom. I am first and foremost a fan, and secondly, I would say I'm an advocate. And for me, if there's a business in that, that's the business. It's me making sure that if I'm speaking up about something, I speak up about something that I believe in, and it isn't with a motive or ulterior motive of being recognized for this thing. It's more of like, if I have a chance on a platform like coming to a convention and I can apply for a panel for Hispanic and Latino and Latinx cosplayers, or I can have a panel and apply for one for over 40 geeks and stuff like that, that's coming from a place of me being like, I want to be able to speak to this. I feel like actually I have a voice to speak to this, and if they accept the panel, great. Awesome. If they don't accept the panel, I mean, you keep trying, but that's if we want to bring it down to sort of like a business sort of thing, that would be it. There really isn't anything when it comes to the moment it becomes like I said earlier, the moment it becomes a job, I feel like that's when it's going to become something that I don't want to do anymore. Like, I feel my passion comes from the fact that I'm not outwardly trying to get anything out of this beyond the greater good, in the sense of like visibility, representation, like that part of it. Yes, 100%. So I can leave that for the next generation, that becomes normalized. But but for follow count, for endorsements, hey, if I apply to be or if I'm a guest at a convention and someone says, hey, you have a unique voice, we want to showcase you. Great, that's awesome, because I'm going to immediately use that platform to say, okay, well, let's talk about these things. These are things that are important to me. These are things actually that I think should be in the cultural discussion, and we need to go ahead and actually address them. So that way, actually, you have an appreciation of it, and people can have a dialogue. And even though this is sort of it's a fandom at the end of the day, but the important thing is actually that if we can do things to make it better for the next generation going forward, that is our responsibility and our is to make sure actually that we are trying to do our best to do better for the next generation.